Welcome to the council meeting for Tuesday the 25th of August. Just to acknowledge that we're also being filmed tonight. This goes up onto the internet for those of you who aren't familiar with our council proceedings, so be aware that there's a little camera in the centre here, mainly to film us around the table, but it might pick up you in the background. And just like to also acknowledge that we're on Kaurna land, and it's a traditional land for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. In the council prayer, we humbly bow before thy throne of mercy, our God, our Heavenly Father, and seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the welfare of our city and the peace and prosperity of our land. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Please be seated. Do any elected members have a conflict of interest they wish to declare with regard to any item tonight? No, I didn't think there would be. That's good. On leave we have nil apologies. We have Councillor Alan Harris. Can I have someone confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council for Tuesday the 28th?
Second.
Moved to Councillor Lee, seconded Councillor Barnett. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against? They carried. And the Mayor's report is there on page 1 and 2. And I had a quick check. I don't think there's been any last minute changes, so if someone's happy to move, it'll be accepted. Councillor Larwood, wish to speak to it at all? Councillor Lee is seconded, wish to speak to it at all? Any questions? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. And we have item 6, verbal reports from council representatives on local government or community organisations. Do we have any verbal reports? No? Terrific. Move on. Item 7, petitions we have nil. Deputations we have 2, and I wish to add another. So I just seek leave of the meeting to have Laurie Kozlovich from the Audit Committee. He's the chair of our Audit Committee, speak as a deputy, and then I'll pull forward a range of items at the conclusion of the deputy speaking. So just seek leave of the meeting to pull forward Laurie's address to us as a deputation. All those in favour? Against? It is carried. Thank you. I now call the first deputy forward, Ms. Carolyn Simmons, if you'd like to come forward, just over here next to Director Matt. Thank you. And for the minutes of the meeting, could you please declare your name and your address?
My name is Carolyn Simmons. I live at Unit 4, 72 California Street, Nailsworth.
Okay, and you have 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you. The prayer's up there. Thank you very much. In case I might forget something, I've written everything out, so please forgive me if I just read out what I want to share on my heart. Thank you, Mayor O'Loughlin, for giving me permission to speak briefly to the council as to why it is best that the prayer before the council meetings be retained. That is, not to add anything to it, nor take away anything from it, but to keep it as it is. I would like to add that we Christians honour you, Mayor, and all councillors, and wish to bless you in your endeavours as council members. For it says in Scripture to pray and give thanks for all those in authority. At the first council meeting I attended here, I heard the prayer before the meeting started. I was impressed how wonderful it was. Let us look at the aspects of that prayer. We humbly bow before thy throne of mercy, O our Heavenly Father, and seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task. Our founding fathers of this area of Prospect City Council held a biblical worldview. This view was that they were acutely aware that we are all born into a sinful world, where each human being on this earth is fallible and self-centric. Because of this, they knew that they needed God's help as a father, as a loving father, for guidance to govern the world in our society. And then praying. Our founding fathers of the Prospect Council believed in prayer. Prayer is one of the mightiest forces upon this earth. God answers prayer. When we don't ask God for help in governing our society, He cannot then answer. then for the welfare of our city and the peace and prosperity of our land. At the last council workshop meeting, there was some discussion of the word welfare and its meaning. The latest Oxford Dictionary, as well as Merriam-Webster's dictionary, state that as the primary definition of welfare is the health and happiness of people. This is not to be confused with the second definition of the word, the care by the state or by any other organisation for people in need. So the word welfare in the context of this prayer is entirely suitable. There is absolutely no need to modify or change it. And then those aspects of our Heavenly Father and in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Some of those on today's council has put forward the proposition that they want something more inclusive by removing saying our Heavenly Father as well as the name of our Lord Jesus. But as I have attended the workshops, I noted that there was no mention that anyone from Prospect Council area has ever asked to change the prayer because of this, or even change the prayer at all. But the Christian faith is still well in the majority, and it can be stated that the Christian faith can be seen as inclusive. To the Muslim, Jesus is honoured as a great prophet. To the Hindu, he is regarded as one of their many gods, as I saw when I travelled India, with many pictures of Jesus displayed along with other Hindu gods. To the Jew, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob is the same God that Christians worship. To the atheist, Jesus is a great philosopher. To the humanist, he is a person of great compassion and someone to emulate.
1 minute left.
Oh, all right. Well, okay. So I have to skip some of this stuff. I would urge you not to remove this opening prayer because Jesus is the bedrock of our civilization. Removing his name is removing him and everything he stands for, which will be a detriment to our society as a whole. Some might think our current prayer is outdated, but I challenge you to think again. Our wonderful, free and democratic country was founded on basic Christian principles. As an English trader was once reminded of this, that when he landed at a once cannibal island, seeing a native studying his Bible, the trader said to him, "Oh, that book is out of date in our country, is it?" asked the native. "Well, if it was out of date here, you would have been eaten long ago." In closing, I would like to read out the council prayer. We humbly bow before thy throne of mercy, O our Heavenly Father, and seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the welfare of our city and the peace and prosperity of our land. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Thank you very much. I might just ask if there's some questions for you
All right.
from the councillors. Are there any questions? No, that being the case, please feel free to rejoin your seats in the gallery. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now have a deputation from Mr. Michael Kirby. If you'd like to come forward in the same position, thank you, Mr. Kirby. And similarly, for the purposes of the minutes, could you state your name and address?
Kirby, 52 Myrtle Street, Prospect.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Yes. I own the properties at 10, 12 and 14 Street, Toronto Street, Ovingham, that are in the new HCZ area. To give context to what I'm to say, the decline and demise of my father has been my main focus for the past 3 years. Your correspondence to me was skimmed and filed for later. This is later. This was why my original objection was so curt. However, a residents group wrote on my behalf. I've been a resident of number 10, Toronto Street. My family lived at the rear first, and then in the front when we took over the shops. My mother ran the shop until the supermarkets made it uneconomical. After a time in the country, I was the occupant of the rear flat on my 20s and 30s. having been aware of the problems of being overlooked by the block of flats at number 8 Toronto Street, and the access problems that the tenants demonstrate at that and the flats to the rear of my property on Churchill Road, I had formed an opinion on the type of redevelopment that would suit number 10 and was not, and so that it was not surrounded by flats on 3 sides. I bought 12 and 14 Toronto Street over the decade. Number 10 has reached the end of its life. Ageing facilities and bad layout, salt damp and white ants mean the only practical way is to demolish it. Now, problems with the North Obiang policy. Present buildings do not fit the form, character item 6. My property is approximately 3+ metres at the front, that's height, and 4 to 6 metres at the rear, depending on which of the 3 properties you want to take. Any replacement other than a modern split level design would have the same problem. The long narrow block, a feature of the design character, would lead to some kind of wheelchair and invalid and invalid unfriendly split level design. Present stock has 3 to 7 steps internally. As I indicated at the start, I have not had time to give this much research. I give this presentation more to flag and indicate my intention and views, and that to produce a reasoned argument. I own the land, have accumulated the funds, and until the heritage conservation issue was raised, I had a vision of what I would be building there. This combined with I was going to combine the 3 blocks and build units on a north-south orientation to make use of the gradient, minimise overlooking, and maximise passive solar. By November, I should be free to give my full attention and desperately want to avoid a Lacornius solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Just hold it there. Just ask if there's any questions from the elected members. Mr. Kirby. Councillor Barnett.
Hi, Michael, Mr. Kirby.
Yes.
Yes, I'm just wondering if you're aware that 10 Toronto Street has been actually taken off the final local heritage places list to be listed.
That means that's the heritage bit of it.
Yeah.
But that's not the conservation zone. So the conservation zone still applies to the buildings, as far as I understand it. The built form that's there, yes, it says that one character of the whole zone is to look at keep the long narrow blocks. But that means anything built on there is going to have to be built straight down the hill. So if you start with the floor being level at the front, being about approximately level with the pavement, by the time you get out the back, you're up another couple of metres. That's how most of my neighbours, when they do extensions, they end up with a second roof underneath, and what do you call it? An outdoor area that's 3 to 4 metres in the air, just by using the slope. And I was quite interesting when you were talking about being overlooked at a previous council meeting. When I'm standing in the rear flats kitchen, I look down on the tiled roof of this block of flats on Churchill Road. That's that two-storey block of flats. And similarly, if you're on the upside of the road, if you're on the front porch of one of the houses in Toronto Street, you look down on the roof of the flats at 8 Toronto Street because of the cut and fill, because of the standard design, cut and filled into the. So I think. Okay.
Any further questions? That being the case, thank you for your presentation. If you could please rejoin the gallery. Thank you again. And now I'd like to call forward our third deputy. Laurie, if you could come up and in the same location. And for the purpose of the minutes, if you could just declare your name and address, and I know you're a very local chair of our audit committee. So.
I'm a local chair of the audit committee. My name's Laurie Kozlovic, 20 Barker Road, Prospect.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes if you need. Just to remind people, Laurie is here to address us as chair of our audit committee. It's a once a year thing we ask the chairs to do. So he's not necessarily here to ask us anything, but to present on behalf of the audit committee. So, fire away.
Thank you. Really, the purpose of the presentation this evening is really to provide an overview of the work that the committee has done over the course of the year and a summary of the findings that we've made. And before I do start with that, I would like to actually thank the management and staff at the council for the quality of the work that they have put in supporting the committee in the reports that it receives. The reports we receive are certainly of a high quality. There's a lot of detail and there's a lot of effort that goes into them to help us do what we do. So that's certainly acknowledged, and we should acknowledge the management for that work. The committee met 5 times over the course of last year, and really our role is to cover a number of areas, primarily focusing on areas of governance, risk and assurance within council. In those 5 meetings, there was a total of 64 recommendations that were made to council, all of which were accepted. The work program that we really cover in terms of what we do with the resources we've got, we use a combination of in-house resources and projects, some external audit activities, and also we work closely with the financial external auditors to help to pull together a picture that gives us some assurance over the activities that are going on with the council. The key sort of projects that we focused on over the course of the year, covering all of those areas, we did a lot of work around policies, around a number of different policies, ensuring that there's compliance with them and that policies are reviewed, renewed and up to date. So there was an amount of work done there. A lot of work done with the accountants around the statutory results and ensuring that importantly, the control environment that exists within the council is effective and is appropriately mitigating the risks that have been identified. And certainly the feedback we've had from our external auditors with the work that they've done has been that we've got a sound control environment and that most of the risks that we're picking up are being well managed. Where issues have been identified, they've been certainly picked up and addressed by management very quickly. So from that perspective, it was pleasing. The third element we look at really is specific areas either of risk or opportunity for the business. So for example, the committee's done some work in the areas of the IT service outsourcing arrangement to ensure that there are appropriate controls and mechanisms to make sure that the transition to a new provider has been well considered, that the risks associated with it are being factored into what we do, and that the transition process represents best value for money and the most appropriate outcome for council. So we've really, over the course of that period, within the limited resources we've got, we think we've got a fairly broad spread and a reasonable understanding of the control environment that exists within council, and the committee is certainly comfortable that the control environment is sound and reasonably robust within the work that we've done. And that's also, as I said, reflected by the work that council's auditors have done and their findings. Probably for us, the key thing that we're all conscious of as a committee is that the long-term financial plan shows the council in the early years of their 10-year plan going into some debt to take on some major projects, and then towards those latter years coming out of that whereby those obligations are covered, and the committee is always looking closely to ensure that the indicators and the financial indicators that the Council has set for itself are being closely monitored, and where they are slightly out, there's a reason for it and there's a plan to get back. And again, we've been certainly comfortable that the points have been well received, and that we can see the appropriate actions being taken to keep Council on track with its long-term financial plan, again, which is pleasing for the committee. The last thing really that I just wanted to touch on is the fact that for the coming years, a piece of work has recently been done with the Council's internal auditors in preparing a new risk review and a new identification of what are the key Council risks, and the future work program will be aligned with that risk-based activity, so that we ensure future work is done and focused, I guess, on the highest areas of risk for the Council. So, as I said, in summary, we're pleased with the way the control environment's working, and again, thank you to the management team for the quality of work that they're presenting to us.
Thank you. I'll just again ask if there's any questions from elected members. Mr. Cosgrove? No, there are not. Thank you very much for your presentation. If you could please rejoin the gallery. I now seek leave of the meeting to pull forward a range of matters associated with the 3 deputies. It's rare for us to have multiple deputies and each one talk about a different item. So if you would just indulge me, I'd like to pull forward, your permission to pull forward item 13.1, which is the report of the Audit Committee meeting. Item 19.7, which is the item regarding the Council prayer, and items 18.1 and 18.2, which are the 2 heritage items for tonight. So all those in favour of putting forward those items, and against, we'll do that straight away. Thank you very much. So we'll move to item 13.1 in your agenda papers on page, recommendations on page 4 for the Audit Committee. There are a number of items there. I'll just take brief questions, if there are any brief questions, of any of the content of the audit report, and draw your attention to, there are a number of recommendations in there regarding how the strategic plan is used and various other matters. So are there any questions on those items? No? If not, I'll take it that you're all tickety-boo and ask for a mover of them en bloc. Councillor Barnett?
Yes, as a member of the Audit Committee, I can agree with Laurie, our chairperson's comments. We do have quite a lot of work to get through, and I agree that we've got the 3 independent members, along with the Mayor and myself as Council, and then a range of Council staff and directors who do most of the work. So we thank them for that. I would like to recommend all of the recommendations contained before you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Evans, do you wish to speak to it? No? Any other speakers? If not, all those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Laurie, if you wish to stay for the balance of the meeting, please feel very welcome. But if you need to leave for some other reason, we perfectly understand. So please feel welcome to leave as well. Thank you very much for coming. Next item we have is 19.7, which is the Council prayer, a recommendation on page 739 of our very compact agenda tonight. CEO's rifling through the hard copy here. Good on you. That has a number of options. I understand this was discussed at the workshop the other day. I wasn't able to make that particular workshop. Because there's 3 options, I'm just conscious that if somebody moves one, trying to amend it is a bit tricky. So I might ask leave of the meeting to suspend meeting procedures just to try and get some sort of consensus, and that might be a quick way to move forward. So seek your permission to suspend meeting procedures until 7:45 should we need. All those in favour? Against is carried. Okay, so in terms of those options in front of you, where did you get to at the workshop? Does anybody wish to lead that? Perhaps Christina, if you'd like to, given that you initiated this issue first.
Yes, and I initiated it not for any religious reasons, but purely because it was an item of the council agenda that's never really been sort of looked at, and so that's what we've been doing. The other point too that was raised, and you'll see there in the workshop notes, was that there was an actual fourth option, and that was to have that council has instead of the current council prayer, has a period of silence, of reflection.
So on page number...
I don't know, I haven't got the pages here. I'd have to go through a whole lot of
Sorry, okay, we'll take that as
pages.
you said. Yep.
Yeah, it was added workshop notes.
So if I could just draw your attention to the recommendations. In terms of preferences, as the kind of the leader of the discussion, acknowledging that we didn't have any agenda other than we should raise this matter every so often. Do you have a preference for any of the three options stated there?
Well, I would like to have included number 4, that instead of the council prayer, council has a period of reflective silence. That was one of the points that was brought up by a suggestion. We had a range of suggestions from elected members and staff, because we're the ones that sit around here. So that was another suggestion.
Presumably that would need some introduction, so we don't just sort of stop the garner welcome and then just fall into silence. So there'd be some reason to go into that reflective period, I take.
Yes, well, I think it's to overcome some of the, issues around that a secular organisation, and that we actually do have people that, for various of their own reasons, would prefer just to be able to have a reflective silence, and then people can silently pray if they wish to, or do whatever they would like to do, reflect on their governments.
Okay, so you're saying that would be your preference out of the 4 options?
Well, I prefer to hear the debate first.
Right. Okay, so I'm just going to move around the table. We've all had the papers. We've discussed this over quite a few workshops. This is at the point of decision making unless we defer it to another workshop. So where are people at? Does anybody wish to start here and state a particular preference? No.
Nothing.
You don't have a preference?
No prayer at all.
No prayer at all. So can I just guide you to the recommendation that yours would be the third option?
Correct. And for personal reasons it would take a long time to explain, but nothing against, certainly not against Christians, certainly not having a go at them, certainly not, trying to exclude them. I just think it's the fairer option.
Okay, yep, thank you.
I support the status quo, so the current prayer. And if that wouldn't work, then I would support recommendation 2, being the modified version.
Okay. Thank you.
Number 2.
Thanks, brother. Number 2.
Number 2. I'm not sure whether that line council amend council prayer to is correct, because that's saying we're amending the prayer to that which is not a prayer anymore, is it? Should that say council amend at the council prayer to the following statement? Something like that.
It's still a prayer, it's got...
Yeah. That's the issue with some people.
I'll come back to that fine tuning in a second, but second option at this stage. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mark.
Thank you. Look, I was always a bit bemused when this came to council. It's not an issue that's ever been raised with me by anybody, except once where somebody told me they were devout atheists and said we should keep a prayer, which I found interesting, and that was, I didn't ask for that comment, it was just provided to me in the election process. I, similar to Councillor Evans, would support the status quo. If the status quo wasn't palatable to the majority of members, I'd go for option 2. But I'm still a bit bemused while we're having this conversation.
Okay, thank you. Monica.
I Well, I'd probably go for option 3, but I understand the reasons why people, want status quo, etc. So I'd stay with option 2. I think that's seems to be the general favour of the month.
Okay, thank you. Christine.
Yes, well, because we did have email from another member of council who wanted to. Yes, I know he can't, but at least we're not in the debate. But I do think, and that's part of where you say, Councillor Group, that it hasn't been raised before. It's been raised quite several times, certainly over my 20 odd years, and it's certainly been somebody who is is non-religious or atheist or that just feel that their wishes certainly aren't being looked after. In fact, when I was mayor, we did talk about asking some of the local priests, and one of them was actually on council as an elected member. He went off council before he had a chance to have a look at it, so we certainly were looking at the wording, and he, as a Anglican priest, was of the opinion that it should be looked at. Then I believe it was brought up when I was off council and the mayor. Yes. So so it hasn't, sort of not been ever discussed, I don't think.
No, he in fact wrote a different version for us, which was not religious in any way. But,
Oh, it's a pity we didn't have that. Have a look at that.
I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, of the 4 options now, Christina, which one is your preference?
Well, I would prefer would be 3, followed by 2, and then followed by 1.
Okay. Right. I'll try and work this out in a second. Alice.
Okay, I'd support the 3rd option, and I guess just to make it clear that under the Local Government Act, and I'm sure David will correct me if I'm wrong, that it's optional to have the prayer in a council meeting, and I would ask the other elected members who would want to have a prayer why we have it in Prospect. So what is it about Prospect that we have a prayer and other councils don't?
Okay, thank you. So 3rd, keep it simple. You're quite right, under the Act. It's not a requirement under the Act at all. No. Now, I make it that we have 3 for the second option, which is an amended statement. I'll come back to the wording on that in a second. And we have 3 for removing the prayer altogether. With an optional, I think, Christina, optional that you'd move to item 2 if there was some kind of, if 3 wasn't successful. Nobody's gone for the 1 minute silence, so I think we can, that's an easy one to eliminate. I'll just get rid of that one. 2 for item 1, which is retain the current prayer. So it seems to me that's not a viable option at this point. Everybody wants to change it in some way or shape or form. Now, if we take out the option 1, that is Tallis and Mark Group, then you had expressed an option that you were then would move to item 2, which then makes the second one have 5 supporters versus the 3rd one having 3 supporters, 3 of which includes Christina, who was comfortable second place to go to number 2. So it seems to me, through that kind of sifting and filtering process, that there's more support ultimately for the second option, which is an amended prayer, and I'll just come back to that word in a second, rather than removal completely or keeping the current one. Does anybody beg to differ with my analysis of where we're at?
I beg to differ with yours.
Sorry. I think from the workshop discussion that it wasn't to be put up as to council amend the council prayer. It was to stand on its own as a statement.
So the introductory words would be council, replace the council prayer with the following statement. Yes. Get that tidied up in a second. Matt?
I'm not sure about your adding up. Yeah, because you've got 8 options and there's only 7 of us here, unless you're including yourself.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's true. Now. You're right. You're exactly right. Yes, because I had Tallis down twice in my early counting of the names. Thank you.
You deserve that.
Let's go through that again.
2 votes.
And I should state because it might can't come down to a casting vote, can it? But anyway, my intention would be that we still have some statement, and I like the way the proposal reflects the one we've had for some time, so I'd be quite comfortable with item 2. So just to recap, we have 2 who are happy to keep the current prayer, 2, quite rightly corrected, who wish to amend the prayer to a statement, and 3 who wish to remove the prayer entirely from the council meeting. Now this is where it gets a little tricky, because out of the first 2, I'm now going to go back and ask who's prepared to move, because at only 2 votes apiece, that's not going to get up, it's my understanding, if someone moves it. So either just checking, I had you, Monica, down as item 2, not 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll go for item 2.
Yeah. So I just want to recap on this. So Mark, Groot and Tallis, in terms of retaining the current prayer rather than a modified statement which reflects the current prayer, put it to you bluntly, if item 2 was moved, would you seek an amendment to revert to item 1?
No, I mean, I appreciate the spirit of what we're doing. I appreciate the numbers are what they are, and I support number 2 as a fairly reasonable compromise, I think. So
I really appreciate that.
It's the same.
Okay, so thank you for the correction on the numbers. We come back to item 2, seems to be the one that's got the most support.
And I'm not totally opposed to item 2 either.
Okay, so that looks like that could be quite comfortable to take it through. I think it would be sensible to pick up on Matt's statement that we're not really amending the prayer, we are replacing it with a statement. Okay, so I'm going to call us back into formal session and ask somebody to move that way. Unless anybody else wants just to raise another item of concern in this, or meeting suspended. If not, let's go back into session and I'll now seek a mover of the second option with a revised introductory line there, which is council replace the council prayer with the following statement. Somebody wish to move that way? Councillor Lee, do you wish to speak to it?
I'll speak very briefly to it because I don't really think we need to spend too much time on it. Look, initially I did think that we should just remove the whole thing, but we do have a Kaurna welcome and we recognise, Kaurna people and their forefathers. I just kind of felt that it would just seem odd that you just welcome that and then nothing else happens. I don't follow organised religion. I don't see a need to pray to one God. But I do like the wording of our council prayer, so I think this is quite a sensible compromise and people can take from it whatever they like for whatever belief that they have. So I think it's a sensible compromise and words that mean something.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Larwood, do you wish to speak to it? Do I have any other speakers?
I'll just say a few things. Other than, yes, I support it. This has been quite a workshop process, and I'd like to thank both the staff and also other elected members for what I consider to be a fairly high level of maturity in the discussion. There are a diverse range of views, and I think that out of session little caucus that we just had was reflective of that. This isn't an issue that I think is easy for a lot of people, and I think the way we've all carried ourselves has been commendable. It is a compromise position. It's not my preferred position. It does play to the words of our initial prayer, and I think that's good. It's changed to a statement. It's reflective of the times. I recognise that, and while I'm not completely happy, I do thank other elected members and staff for what I consider to be a fairly reasonable and respectful compromise. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, and I agree with the last two or the ones that have spoken, because I think it is that word respect. And that's to me what was the nub of the whole thing. That I do know that there have been over the years people, elected members and staff, and some in the gallery that have felt uncomfortable about this. And I think that we are now, being able to reflect on it. And I think now this really shows respect for all the different cultural diversities in our community, in our world.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Green.
Look, just briefly, just to echo some of previous comments, I think this is not a bad compromise in terms of, I guess, the fairly extreme views that are reflected around the council table. While I am supportive of coming up with this as an option to vote on, I won't necessarily be voting on it in terms of voting for this particular change. I think one of the joys about being part of a democracy is you can have the debate, and I think we can have it quite maturely, and I think it has been quite respectful. And while I don't necessarily agree with everything Councillor Barnett's put up, I certainly respect her right to bring it up and for us to have a good debate about it. So thank you for doing that. As I said, my view is the status quo was okay. I understand the reasoning behind why I've got to this point. I haven't quite made up my mind yet, so I'll be interested to hear what the closing speaker has to say. But
Nothing.
Okay, well, I've clearly made up my mind. Well, there you go. I'm waiting to be inspired.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Unless there are any further speakers, I will ask the mover to sum up.
No, that's fine. I think enough's been said.
Nothing further to add to your excellent opening speech. That does conclude the debate. All those in favour? 5. All those against? 1. It is thus carried. Thank you, councillors. And for those of you in the gallery who are interested in that item, that concludes discussion about that item tonight. We won't be discussing the council prayer in this meeting. So if you wish to move on home, we fully understand that. Those of you who are riveted to the meeting and want to stay for the next item, you're welcome to stay. We'll now move to that next item, and that was item 18.1.
So moved.
And that, thank you, Councillor Cruz. That was, just to get the title correct, the Local Heritage Places Development Plan amendment to the submission to the Minister for Planning recommendation on page 140. And in moving, Councillor Group, do you wish to speak to it?
Look, I will just briefly, excuse me, one of the things that I really like about living in Prospect and certainly when I moved to Prospect and bought a house in Prospect was the community that came with it, and part of the community is clearly, for me, its streetscape as well. I chose to live in Prospect because I liked what Prospect had to offer. I liked the property style that Prospect had to offer, and I like the diversity that it's starting to offer in different parts of the city now. One of the ways to protect our streetscape, I see, is part of looking at our development plan from time to time, and we've been doing that now for some months. And I think we've been doing it really well in terms of engaging with the community and having lots of conversations, and I think around this table we're having some fairly good debate as well. Heritage is always going to be a subjective matter. Not two people are going to agree on the same thing when it comes to a heritage issue. But our job as elected members is to make leadership decisions and to lead, as we see, as important for the City of Prospect. When we had the debate, and indeed when the previous council and the previous council before that had debates on density and heights, particularly around corridors, a lot of that conversation revolved around the issue of how do we protect what's in our side streets, how do we make sure we keep our character and as much as we possibly can our side streets while providing diversity in housing, particularly along the main corridors. And one of the ways of doing that, and there are two items tonight that we'll be talking about in the lines, but one of them is the local heritage places. Common sense also means that not every property is going to get in that list, and we've had some debate around 3 particular properties, and I won't mention them, we all know what they are, and there's been some fairly robust debate both from our professionals who have been giving us advice, but also amongst ourselves as elected members. I think we've got the balance right. I'm supportive of those 3 properties not remaining in the local heritage DPA as protected properties, and I think the recommendation reflects what we as a council and as a whole want to do in terms of heritage in the City of Prospect. So I'd urge members to consider the recommendation and vote favourably on it.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Lee, you wish to speak to it?
Not very much more to add. I think Councillor Groot said everything that needed to be said, except to say that despite those 3 properties not being included, and I know some people are disappointed about that. We have actually an opportunity to protect it an extraordinary amount of our city. So I think it's an absolute win-win for everything that's been included. I think that it still allows a little bit of wriggle room around any sort of anything that people want to do to their properties or their area, and I think it's a great outcome. So I too would urge people to vote positively.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I'd just like to thank all involved in what's been a very thorough process. It had irked me that it's taken so long for us to go with all the different main road amendments and whatever's going on, and so finally we didn't manage to get around finally to our Heritage Places Development Plan amendment. So we've had just a quick overview for those who haven't read the extensive documents. We have public and agency consultation undertaken for a 2-month period. Council, we've had 3 independent reports, 2 done by the Vines and one by further one by Peter Bell, Council received 27 responses for Local Heritage Place Development Plan Amendment called LHP-DPA, just so I don't have to keep repeating it, and 5 state government agents' responses. Public meeting was held. We had mentioned the 3 independent heritage reviews. We had just 14 submissions received in opposition to the proposed listing of 79 sites. The majority, 82% of the proposed local heritage places, have not been the subject of any comments as part of the public consultation phase. I'm pleased that DIPTI has requested that a policy be inserted to cover adaptive reuse of heritage places in accordance with the South Australian Planning Policy Library. And the most significant change will be the introduction of demolition control. And so essentially this means that those buildings that are determined to contribute to the character of the area, demolition is not appropriate unless the structure is unsound or the replacement development will maintain the same level of contribution to the character of the policy area. And another significant change will be the introduction of new desired character statements, recognising that built heritage in the City of Prospect contributes to the amenity of the area and specifically identify elements of character the Council wishes to maintain. And so I think that, as has been mentioned before, the City of Prospect has a distinctive and desirable character which is highly valued by the majority of local residents and visitors to the area. And the large number of original buildings across the city make an important contribution to this character. And I believe that we, as a council, are committed to preserving the heritage of the area. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Bowman, did I see your hand up?
Yes. Look, I just had questions around I think it's a fantastic document and I'm very supportive of it, but I had just one question about the procedural documents, and this is in regards to the transition zone. Now, the copy I have doesn't have page numbers on it for whatever reason, but it's attachment 39 and 40. And
For us to catch up to.
yeah, I know. I think it's 493 or something like that.
It's about where it is, you reckon?
Now, it may be on the next agenda, but it refers to the historic conservation zone.
Sorry, and was attachment?
Well,
39?
39, that's in the...
Yeah, it is, but it talks about the conservation zone. I mean, sorry, the historic... okay.
The top is an attachment number and the bottom is a page number.
No, Councillor Lee has corrected me. I've jumped ahead.
Yeah, because these are the attachments.
But it would be interesting to know if the this transition zone affects local heritage places as well.
So you're an item 18.2, are you?
Yes, I believe so.
Very enthusiastic, Councillor.
I am. I tried to print it off. But
That's all right. So we'll come back to that discussion in the next item.
yeah, I just wanted to know that if it affected local heritage places as well, the procedural document.
I'll take the question. Director.
Through the Chair, I'm not 100% sure I'm clear on the question. Are we asking if a heritage place is at the edge of a zone, does it have the same potential opportunity to be a higher density replacement? I guess the short answer to that is maybe. However, the more detailed answer would be demolition control is strong for local heritage items, and those items, depending on what is covered by the listing, and you've seen those listings, if a particular item was to talk about the built form and its allotment, there would be no, I guess, ability to have a higher density outcome on it.
Sorry, Director, just
Confusion.
Some degree of comfort.
just to, I hope not add to the confusion. My understanding of the Act is that despite things being locally heritage listed, they can still be demolished on merit.
Look, absolutely. Generally, you would need some supporting evidence that the building has deteriorated to such a point that it would warrant removal, or if the merits of a replacement were such that the character wouldn't be felt to be lost. There'd be some consideration.
So in answer to what I thought I heard the question was, if you had a heritage listed house immediately adjacent the transit zone, simply because you could put a little apartment building on it is not a sufficiently meritorious reason to demolish a locally heritage listed house.
Back to you, Chair. No.
No. I think that's the nature of the
I think that
question.
was the nature of my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
There's so many.
the adaptive areas. Strength.
Sorry, Councillor Bowman, anything further? Is there any further debate on this item? Back to you, Councillor Green, to sum up.
I think enough's been said. I'll just, but having said that, I would just urge members to vote for this particular motion.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Alrighty. Next item is 18.2. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Creek is to speak to that one as well as endorsement of historic conservation zone policy areas development plan amendment for submission to the Minister of the Plan.
Look, I will, and I'll be brief because probably my comments from the last paper reflect the comments also on this paper. I know that there's been some community debate about conservation zones. We've heard tonight from a representative, and I know there's been other representations by email and by phone calls and others. But I want to just point out a couple of things. One was that of course, this doesn't exclude development in these areas, and that's an important point to make, that it doesn't exclude development in those areas. The second point is that this, the adoption of this historic conservation zone protects 12% of council. It's still only 12%. It's not a high number. It's 12%. It's not 22%, it's not 52%, it's 12%. So this is still a relatively small amount of our council area that we're protecting. And the third thing I want to point out, and this was in the paper, and I think it's a really good comment, the development plan amendments are designed to complement the urban corridor zone amendments, which offer opportunities for medium and high density residential developments to 15% of the total council area. So we talked a bit about that before. But through both amendments, a balance has been struck between the preservation of Prospect's character and the opportunity for infill development. And I think that's a really good point, that we have a balance, and we're trying to maintain that balance across corridor areas and across side streets. And I think this paper does that. I think the introduction of the historic conservation zone will help us protect only 12% of our area, but it's a good 12% that should be protected. Again, I'd urge people to vote favourably on the matter.
Thank you. I'll have a seconder for this one.
Yes.
Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to it?
No, just that there have been some people who have, with the submissions and all that. But I think if you read the summary of all of the submissions from everybody, and I think that that's been dealt with, the reasons why if that some of that's just been noted and other things have actually been enacted on or taken notice of. Right, so I think that's a fairly important point to make, that we do take notice, of the bulk of the comments and have taken on board or noted quite a few, and also that we are bound by some information from the Minister of Planning's office, some advice, that we're given. So I think we didn't necessarily want to set ourselves up for failure, but to do the best that we could.
Okay, thank you. Any further speakers on this item? Councillor Evans.
I'd just briefly say that I'm supportive of the recommendation and also the spirit, I think, of what we're trying to do here. And we do have to look at, in many respects, about what planning is and on balance, and looking at the entire issue as a whole. And the question mark is, do we want to preserve parts of our city and what makes our city great? And having grown up in Kernelike Gardens, understanding what heritage means at a day-to-day level, we do see unique pockets of activity emerging in places like Kernelike Gardens that do preserve those elements of their city that are unique. For me, the big question is, do we want our kids and potentially our grandkids to enjoy the same feel and vibrancy and community that we have in City of Prospect at the moment? And I think we do. 15% being zoned for corridor renewal or thereabouts, and this being 12% for heritage. In some ways, not necessarily preventing development, but more or less requiring that there be an element of the streetscape and the character of our city preserved. On balance, I think that's a good thing. On balance, I think that after hearing the submissions and after hearing even the objections that have come about from this issue, there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of opposition to the concept itself. It seems to be more about it applying to individual dwellings. And I think as policymakers of the city of the whole, we do have a responsibility to look at the character of our city, and I think this will direct us in the right way in terms of preserving that character while also supporting growth in our corridors. So on balance and on merit, those two things, corridor growth and conservation zones, I do support that as the future for the city.
Any further debate? I'd just like to speak briefly from the chair. Historic conservation zones are still somewhat controversial in the planning system, but I'm a big supporter of them because they provide almost like an encumbrance works in a modern housing estate, where you're contracted by a block of land, you've got to meet the development plan. You have to meet a number of other rules that are put in place by that developer. And that is entirely about protecting the character of that development so they can have a consistent outcome and sell the next block and the next and the next one. Historic conservation zones don't work exactly like that, but they are about protecting character with successive development. And what I've seen happen over the years is that these zones become really much loved places because it doesn't stop development. In fact, what it does is people buy into it because they love the street. They love the integrity of the character, the heritage nature of the street, and they tend to pick off the houses that don't fit, and they knock them over, and they build reproduction or sympathetic homes. Now, I'm not a big fan of reproduction designs, but I can show you houses in Flora Terrace, just the closest historic conservation zone to us right now, that are reproductions and have actually added to the street and have taken away homes that I think we would all be happy to say, that's not important to our city, and I'm sure most people in the city would say that's not a loss. And have put back something which is quite beautiful, including the fencing. And the fencing in a heritage conservation zone, as you'd be aware, is also important. So successive development in historic conservation zones tends to recreate or add to the character, and in that sense add to the property value of all the other neighbours. So if you want to invest somewhere, contrary to popular belief, I think you'd find investing in a historic conservation zone is probably a better bet than in a street that's not got that level of protection over it. Much as we would like every street to have that level of protection, the laws simply don't allow us to be so prescriptive, but heritage conservation zones do allow us to be much more prescriptive, and I think to the benefit of that street and the city as a whole. If this does get up, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, this will significantly increase the number of heritage conservation zones we have from 6 to 12, whatever it is, about doubling. And I think that's really significant. But even with that doubling, I think, as the opening speaker said, we're still only at 12% of the city. And within the 12%, remember that you can demolish things within that heritage conservation zone. It's not about the demolition, it's about what replaces it. It's only the items that we passed in the last item that are the ones that have that higher order of protection and makes demolition harder. I do also want to remind people in my closing remark that, and this is probably the benefit of the gallery too, these two items are merely what council thinks should happen, what we desire as an elected body. We now send this off to the Minister. So our job's not done yet. We have to convince the Minister and his department, because he'll ask them for comment, that what we want is worthy of him gazetting as law, and it will not take effect until the Minister concurs and gazettes. So we have a bit of a pathway ahead of us if this is what we want to do, and I don't see any reason why it's not what we want to do. So let's get back into it and see if there's any other debate. If not, I'll ask the mover to close up if there's no further debate. Councillor Wood.
Look, I think a lot has been said in terms of why this is an important thing for the City of Prospect. I think Councillor Evans articulated that quite well. Pleased to hear you talking about kids and grandkids as well. But I just want to, I guess, reiterate the point that the Mayor has made in terms of this is our decision at this point. It's not the government's decision. That's still to come. And so it sounds, well, it feels like there's going to be some support for the motion as read, and so I look forward to voting favourably on it.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? All those against? Is carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, for those of you who are here tonight to understand where we're at with heritage matters, those are the two items that Council has now made its decision to refer to the Minister, and there will be no further debate on heritage matters tonight. So if you're here only to heritage matters, thank you very much for coming in your interest. Please keep in touch with the staff about what happens next, and we'd understand fully if you wanted to go home at this juncture. Thank you very much for coming along. We now get on with the balance of the meeting. To do so, we've got to go backwards on the agenda to item 9.1, which is, 9, which is items on notice, and we have one from Councillor Evans on page, whatever it is, page 3, I presume, is it? 3. Yeah, thank you. So, Councillor Evans, when moving a motion on notice, one stands and reads it out as the mover. So, are you happy to move what's here, or?
Yeah, if I could propose a brief amendment as well, if that's possible.
One amendment. If you've got an alternate motion, do you have it written anywhere?
I do, I've just got it here.
Can you just have that up the front here, if that's okay? We'll get that up. I have spoken, as you would expect, a good mayor would do, a good chair anyway, to Councillor Evans about his motion on notice to see whether we can improve it, and provided his improvement is not contrary to what you've seen in the papers, I intend to accept that as the motion. Of course, if it's contrary, it's got to go back out to public notice. I don't think it will. So just bear with us. So, Councillor Evans, that is another part to the motion. It's not a replacement for one or two.
No, just another part, if that's acceptable.
So, in moving, if you could please stand and read that out to them.
Sure. Right from the very beginning, or just from the first point?
From point 1.
Okay, so Councillor Tallis Evans, having complied with the provisions of Regulation 12.2 of the Local Government Procedures at Meetings Regulations 2013, will move Council notes the street corner meeting which was held on Saturday 15 August 2015 for residents of King Street and Redden Street to discuss known issues of parking and congestion, and Council thanks the approximately 35 residents in attendance for their feedback and strong resolve to see Council action issues of parking and congestion which have been noted, and Council undertakes to keep residents informed of its progress in identifying solutions to the issues identified.
Thank you. And in moving, I noticed you read out action issues of parking and congestion. Is that correct? Should that be plural? It's not on the screen at the moment.
Oh, okay. It probably should be yes.
That's how you read it out. Yes. I'm not sure you read it, but that's what you said. That makes more sense. Okay, thank you. You should speak further to...
if I could just briefly, and I guess to begin with, to point out that this is something that the council staff initiated. So the council staff, and particularly Director Georgopoulos, did a fine job organising and being proactive in coordinating a street cornering meeting, and I think that needs to be pointed out, is that Councillor Ali and I attended really at the invitation of council staff that were right onto this issue very early, and that was very pleasing. It is a big issue, and it's the King Street Temple, and I'm sure many elected members are aware of it. The purpose of this motion is more so just to note the street corner meeting and to note residents' concerns about these issues of parking and congestion, which have gone on for some time. It's not necessarily to propose actions, and I know the Director and his team are currently working on actions as we speak. However, the sentiment that residents gave us at that meeting was quite resounding, and as a result of that, I felt it appropriate that there be some formal noting of the issues that they did raise to us, being those of parking and congestion at certain peak periods of time of activity. So that's all I really wanted to do, is just put in the formal records that there was this street corner meeting, to thank staff for being so proactive in really getting on top of the issue. And again, it was something that Councillor Lee and I were invited to attend, and to note that there were these concerns that residents expressed to us, quite unified as well. They all had their own particular understanding of the severity of various different types of issues on the day, but broadly speaking, they spoke from one voice when it came to parking and congestion was something they wanted to see council action. So that's the purposes of the motion, and I thank council and the mayor for indulging me as I make a couple of rookie errors there. So,
Councillor Lee, do you wish to second it as being the ward councillor? Do you wish to speak to it?
Only to congratulate Councillor Evans, and especially Director Georgopoulos, on how calm and rational they were with people who weren't necessarily, they're quite impassioned about it, so that doesn't always bring a high level of rationality to a situation. In fact, one resident said that he wouldn't be Greg for all the tea in China, because to have to deal with people like that and still smile must be a very difficult thing. But I think he's used to it because he gets it from us once a council meetings. So I think this issue is it's become something more than the narrow streets policy. I know we have something blanket across the city, but it's quite unique in the fact that there is a community event there at least 4 nights a week that's causing quite a lot of angst amongst residents. And it's fantastic to see staff being very proactive and taking on board some issues, and I'm sure that we'll hear about it in the future workshops. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further speakers to the motion?
Just to say that I was at the Champions meeting at this was discussed, and I think it's really only about the two of these venues in our city that have really required this really extra effort. No, not the pubs. Yes, well, I'll say the Milner Street church and the other, but that is purely not because they're necessarily churches, but because of the amount of people attending, and cars and activities and functions and all that comes with it. I guess we'd probably love to have the same level of activity with our town hall, but that hasn't happened of modern times. Anyway, so yeah, I think, and it was just very interesting for me to hear, some of the what transpired at the meeting, and also some of the perhaps some innovative ways, not just the usual reaction to how we deal with some of these, but to try and think a bit outside as well. Yeah, so I'm sure we'll hear more about that from the staff.
Further debate? Councillor Group.
So I just have a brief question, just in terms of dot point 2, Council thanks the approximately 35 residents. Are we going to write to those residents to do that? Because I suspect most won't probably read our minutes or watch our YouTube. So I just thought, I don't know whether Director Georgopoulos has a view on that, but whether we're writing to residents, because that might be a useful thing to do.
I'll take the question. Should the motion get up, Director, what do you intend to do about the thanks bit? Just take it as read, or do you have some other intention?
Through the Mayor, we will be writing to the residents anyway about our next point of action, so we can include a thank you in that correspondence.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. Any further debate? I just chip in from the chair. I'm really excited about any community mob that has great attendance, and has young and old and celebrates lots of things. And they've invited me down there as the mayor, and I think they're a great mob. If I was reading their ethos, I knew nothing about the Sikhs, but they've got a really, really good ethos, very work-centric too. So I encourage you to get to know a bit about it. And what it says to me is we've got a great opportunity here to not just welcome them and their activity and how they activate that part of our community. And we have, I think people of Indian background are now our highest after those of English background in our city, greater than Italians and Greeks put together, I think. So it's a really important part of our community. But wouldn't it be fantastic if the local residents embraced and were really happy about how it was all done, so that when they had a celebration, the residents came out in the street to see what was happening and joined in, as did happen when I was down there a couple of years ago. The residents were quite excited about it. So I hope, and I commend the staff for getting onto it. It's been an issue for a while, so it's about time we got to it. Let's do it in a way where there's a win-win. Because I don't see much animosity against the religion, the faith, or the community. It's really about logistics, and it would happen with whoever was down there. There's no parking at all on the site. I mean, the whole thing's developed before people really had cars, or certainly as many as we have now. So there's a real problem with that site, and I'm sure if they had more money, they would find another spot themselves. But they don't. They are where they are, and we need to do as much as we can to make it work as best we can for everybody. And I really look forward to seeing how that's going to pan out. That's the first part of my pitch. Great encouragement, and thank you for bringing the motion and for doing the work. The second part is it's probably a little more interesting. I understand that we have the ability to take a use away from a site should it not be exercised for 2 years, if it's not the underlying use of the area. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's actually correct.
Right. So we had the option of removing that church right from that site because it was unoccupied for a long, long time, as many of you would know. And it's now reoccupied as a church, so we can't do anything about the use. They have the right to use it as a church because it was a church. What I suggest we all do is have a look around at sites that might be a problem in this regard, that just aren't catered for correctly, and encourage the staff to remove the use from the site. This has happened to us only a couple of times since I've been here, but it is a right that we have to correct a planning anomaly that's happened prior, as in a church being built without a car park, that would definitely be required now. But I think the other one we had was a house that had a professional office in it, that because that office was not withdrawn as a use, was seen as a business, and that is now a business premises, and that wasn't the desired outcome. So if there are other instances like this, and perhaps to highlight to the staff, if you could give it a bit of thought, because it's much, much easier to do it when it's not got 400 people in it. And it's almost impossible to do now, and we could actually head some of these things off at the pass if we kind of got ahead of it a little bit. So I just wanted to state that we do have options with these scenarios before the event that we should exercise. Thank you. Any further debate on that item? If not, I'll ask the mover, Councillor Evans, to sum up if you need to.
I think we've said everything that needs to be said.
Excellent. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. We now go to questions with notice. There are nil. Questions without notice, are there any? No? Protocol then. We will adopt all the items on block other than those reserved by members or myself. So 13.1, of course, we have heard about. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 15.1, the Regional Public Health and Wellbeing Plan? Really comprehensive document. I know it's long, but it's a fantastic, fantastic document. The 15.2, the Future of Library Services, Councillor Bowen. The 16.1, Prospect China Engagement Action Plan. So 18.1, of course, we've done. 18.2, we've done. The 18.3, I will withdraw because we need to make an appointment there. 19.1, the bylaw review. I think Councillor Stanton wishes to withdraw it. I think we have a slight change to the wording on. So Councillor Stanton, it's with you. 19.2, the fourth budget review. Does anybody wish to remove that? 19.3, the Digital Transformation Local Government Initiative. I think I saw Councillor Evans' hand first. 19.4, we need to withdraw. I will do that to the number or nil against that. 19.5, the Ghana Indigenous Land Use Agreement. We need to withdraw that with a name or no name in that item, so I will withdraw that. 19.6, Local Government Association Annual General Meeting. I will withdraw for discussion, and we have a couple of ideas for motions. And council prayer we have dealt with. So can I have someone move on block item 15.1, 16.1, 19.1, sorry, not 19.1, 19.2. So I say again, 15.1, 16.1 and 19.2.
So moved.
Seconded.
Lee, seconded by Councillor Barnett. All those in favour? Against, they are carried. Thank you. Okay, so item 15.2, Councillor Bowman, just a brief reason why you withdrew it.
Just wanted clarification about the usage of the library compared to its current usage.
So to ask a question.
Yes.
Do you wish to move the report in its current form and ask the question in your...
Yes, that's fine.
Please, yep. So as mover, could start with a speech or start with a question?
I will start with a question. Look, it was really just a quick one in regards to how our current Thomas Street Centre is used. So before the digital hub, we actually had the cottage. I believe there were 2 rooms dedicated to crafting and let's call it wet crafts or messy crafts. And when I read through the report, I noticed that there is an activity area which is a meeting room, but I couldn't find anything that specifically related to the kind of activities that we do there. So through the chair, I'd just like to ask if that has been accounted for to the director.
I believe so, Director.
I couldn't see it, but I might have missed it.
Through the chair, all the specifics of the current uses were fed into the consultant, not by me, by people who know it closer on a day-to-day basis. Whether or not the uses that you're speaking of were one of those uses, I can't confirm, but if it's a current use, it would have been fed into the discussions.
I know there's wet crafts or gluing and painting and stuff is done in that room, that's the cottage, so that's certainly a current use.
Yeah, but yeah, I was just hoping that was captured in the new plan. I couldn't see it anywhere. That's
Okay, we'll take that as a note just for
Yep.
to check.
Right.
Thank you. Anything further you wish to say about the report? No? Great, do I have a seconder? Councillor Gruder, I think I saw it.
Oh, it's your areas that go for.
I'll do it.
Now,
We're all being so polite tonight. Look, I just want to support the motion in the paper. There's been a lot of really good work put into it. There was just a couple of comments I want to make. One, in the letter from DECD, they do comment about the pressures around enrolments, which certainly makes sense in terms of space requirements. They also make a comment about additional green space and the pressures on the lack of green space. My understanding is the only green space that will be freed up as a result of this might be the removal of some transportable buildings on the site, because I was a little concerned when I first read that they might be talking about green space on Mainmouth Road, no building, but clearly they're not. Clearly they probably can't. So I just think that's a...
statement, sorry.
Yeah. So it protects it, presumably. So I just think, in case they're thinking anything outside of left field. A little concerned about the comments in there about unable to confirm the extent of flexibility at the end of the lease, but certainly ask us to maintain our conversation and communications with the department, which I think is good. But the other point I want to make goes to the heart of the report, because we do talk in the report very much about library services, and I think in the conversation we've been having as a group, we've been talking about a facility which definitely include a library, but could include council chambers, or could include community space, or could include a whole range of things. When you read the report, it certainly talks about flexibility in use of space, and there's a lot of space that's being proposed, 2,500 square metres. I think that's correct. Or thereabouts. Two. So there's certainly lots of space and lots of capacity for us to do different things, but I just don't want to limit our thinking, and if the press were here tonight will limit their thinking either around this just being about a library which has books and DVDs for hire. My view is we want something much more than that. I think that's where the conversation's been going. So I just wonder, maybe a question to the Director about how we can change some of that language to, from my perspective, and others might disagree, but from my perspective, how can we have the language which is much more inclusive of something broader than just books and CDs?
Director?
Look, through the Chair, I think going forward we can certainly change that common vernacular of how we speak about this building. The reason why I guess the word library was used over and over again in relation to this is that it started as a review of library services or stuff that happens within a building that currently houses a library. So for ease of discussion, it focused on that as the term. But you're absolutely right. The consultants, the staff, myself have all been talking, as well as the elected members, about it being much more. So we can certainly, I think, start that change now in terms of how we speak about this new building.
Thank you, Director, and that's exactly what I wanted to hear, so that's really good. The last thing I just mentioned was that we have a pretty brave decision to make in the coming years. It'll be this council making a pretty brave decision around $8 million or thereabouts, or lease costs, or whatever it might be. But I think also it's a very exciting decision to make, and something that's certainly a legacy and a good community asset for Prospect and for people living around Prospect as well, for that matter. So thank you for the work that's gone into the report by staff as well. Certainly it's very extensive.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Just with a question, and it's probably to Director of Corporate Services, around this $8 million in the long-term financial plan. Has Audit Committee given us any feedback yet on how that fits with their sustainability goals? I'm just interested in their thoughts on the long-term financial plan and what our benchmarks are there.
Through the Chair, Audit Committee at this stage, but after the council meeting, we will email it to all the committee members as part of an attachment to make them aware of it. How do we fund this $8 million? In the long-term financial plan at the moment, we do have a $5 million provision of a $5 million. That will result in looking at the 10-year, 4-year out of the 10, we will not be sustainable. So having the $8 million, that will bring us to similar 4-year out of the 10 that we are not reaching our target. We will not live within our target. However, the impact to the operating statement is about $250,000 in terms of interest repayment, additional interest repayment that will be impacted on that. What we will be out also is the net financial liability ratio and the national liability ratio and the amount itself. So previously with the $5 million, 5 out of 10, we will not be within our target. Now with the $8 million, about 6 out of 10 will not be within our target. So long as council need to accept those ratios are not within our target, that is a draft, a snapshot of our dashboard at the moment with the $8 million.
So not unachievable, but noting that it has a big impact.
Definitely.
And if I can just ask a quick follow-up, sorry. So that will be in the next budget review that we do. So we'll redo those, or will we wait till the next annual business plan before that?
Good question. I think the independent person says $8 million, but we've not verified size or arrangements yet. So at what point would we incorporate a larger number into the numbers, Director?
Yeah, through the Chair, we will review the long-term financial plan probably towards November, December. That's the first time we will relook at our assumptions, and the assumptions will be presented to the Audit Committee, whether they stay or they need to be amended. But Council will adopt an amended form at its annual budget in June next year.
Next year. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Stan.
Yes. Yesterday I was a part of a community meeting at Narswood Primary, which was attended by the Education Minister and Governing Council and a whole lot of mums and dads who are primarily interested about school zoning. But the later part of the meeting actually drifted on to what was going to be happening with the Thomas Street site and whether the school who was going to pay for doing the place up once we vacated. So I immediately took to believing that we were vacating the site. The interesting part of the meeting was that the fact that everyone seemed quite comfortable with the fact that the library was moving, but they were very concerned about were we going to have a library, where was it going to be, and what was it going to be about. And so one of the things I would urge us is that they really want to be a part of the conversation early in the piece. That's parents, interested parties, governing councils, whoever. The community really want to be a part of the conversation as early as possible and help us design, apart from just the 8 around the table and 9, help us design what a library might be. So I'd urge council to start, as soon as we've made the decision that we're going to go ahead with this process, we start engaging the community as early as possible so that they can have the vision and share the vision with us.
Great idea. The directors noted that. Councillor Lowe.
I've got a question which I'll direct to the Chair for potential redirection. I'm interested in knowing where we're at with getting started on the Main North Road master plan, because I'd hate to see this discussion go ahead too quickly, without getting a fair way through the Main North Road master plan, because I see what we might end up with as being maybe one of the centrepieces of that plan. So I'm hoping that we're not going to go charging down one path only to have to turn around and rethink what we're doing. So,
good point. I'll take the question and direct it to Matt. Direct to Matt.
Through your Mayor, that process has started, and an internal working team has been set up who are going to be taking the lead on that project. They're called Urban Innovation Team. They have identified what skills and skills they've got in-house that we can do that project with, and what we need externally. We've got some budget for that, and where they've mapped out key milestones. And I recall in November there'll be a workshop on the project, and there's been some they've already identified what the key significant sites are as part of that project, and obviously the library, the depot, the main North Park Shopping Centre. They're all 3 key nodes of activity which are of high interest, and so it won't be missed.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Anything further, Councillor Lowe?
Has the area around Prospect Oval been identified as a key node for consideration as well? And you haven't really mentioned anything further down towards the end of Main North Road here into the city. So is it been predetermined already what the key nodes are going to be, or is that all part of the discussion? You're getting slightly off the topic here.
It's all part of it. That will be workshopped in when it's brought to council, but that is also identified as a site, as well as the any council-owned land on the road, including the Rose Garden.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, you can come back to me now.
Sorry, did I miss you?
Not to worry. I'm just so I think just some of this, some issues, and reading it that we keep, saying like the future of library services, but I think that's code really for looking at it as perhaps a holistic sort of service. That's like the community hub and other community learning hub, whatever. But looking at it, involving all of that. Yes, and I'd also made a link with Councillor Larwood, about, yes, we do need to look at this holistically and about what else we're doing, and particularly if it's going to be somewhere the main road boulevard and the master plan and everything like that. I think that somehow we really need to pull those things and that thinking together. And also, to me, it's very much also about the transport issue. If part of our thing is to get people to be, going, pedestrians, riding their bikes and all of that, we need to seriously think about transport connected with that new way of thinking as well. Because again, if it's up there in the centre of the city, if you're down on Devonport Terrace or over on Airlie Avenue or Hampstead Road, how do you get there? And yet if we put it over I'll be silly, over on Devonport Terrace, so I think it's, again, just looking at this holistic sort of view of it. But I'm sure, I sort of, yeah, I don't think the papers that we've got before us are quite there yet, so I guess that's what we'll be doing in November time, or right? Because now, you know, time is sort of going to catch up with us, isn't it? Okay.
Further debate? From my point of view, from the chair, I'm trying to work out the maths on it, but there's no doubt this is a large decision. It was an $8 million thing. It's quite possibly the largest financial commitment the council has made of any type for many years. A bigger project than this one. This was 4.5, I think. Even bringing that up to present value is probably still less than 8 million. So the next nearest large decision to it may well have been building the town hall way back when. So it could be the largest decision for this council in 100 years. I don't know, but I just want to belie the significance of it. And I think whilst it's exciting, I think we have to make sure we do as good a job as we can, because it's quite possible that what we decide to do could have a life of 100 years. And that kind of makes me sit back and think, well, what a responsibility that is to get it right. And I really like Councillor Stan's idea that we embrace the evictor and ask him to come on board and help us get it right. So that was a lovely idea, but it's exactly what we should do. And we should be talking to the other schools as well. What do they want in the community library that they don't have in their own library? We should talk to all of our community groups who use the thing, of course, and that will be done. And talk to our community about what they're not getting that they might want to get. We've got that fantastic survey information now that could really help them shape our thinking. And of course, when our library gets built, it'll be the very latest library. Our community centre gets built, the very latest in design in the entire state. And then when somebody cuts a ribbon, might be me, might be someone else, it'll be the latest ribbon cut on a community centre in the country. So therefore we can aspire to be at the pointy end of innovation in that space. And I'm not talking bells and whistles, I'm talking about really solid, grounded thinking about the best facility that we can possibly get. And it starts making me think about the location. And I appreciate there are some people who've got views about this or that, but I'm really enjoying having a really open mind about it, because we want to engage the residents in this discussion as well. And one tonight said, why don't you think about the Toyota site in the corner by the Oval? I thought, oh, that's interesting, I never thought about that. But there's a site that's zoned 5 stories, and we could do that. We have to obviously talk to the current owner, but we do own the park on the other side of that current owner, which I know they'd be very interested in trying to consolidate instead of having a street up the middle of their operation. But we could have a centre that backs onto our largest recreation zone, and we can finally make use of the bunker, the radio bunker.
The RSL.
The archive.
The RSL hall.
The RSL hall, and there's a whole heap of things that we can have a think about. So I thought, wow, what another option for us to work through and try and measure up. How does that come together? And the location for me is as important as what happens inside the building, because of exactly the reasons that Councillor Barnett spoke about. It has to be somewhere which is at the heart of our community, that everybody feels is theirs, that they own, they want to come to, that it's easy to get to, easy to park at or under or wherever it is, and it adds something to the community that's beyond just the bricks and mortar that it's built on. So I'm really excited about it and terrified all at the same time. As I say, it's a huge decision. But I look forward to a process, and as the report says, we've got to get our skates on. I've been in the industry of developing things for a long time. I can tell you that time will go in a heartbeat, and there's such a lot of work for us to do. Unless, of course, we just say, get on and build a Colorbond shed and we'll put bookshelves in it. That's easy, but I know that all of us want to do something far, far more profound than that, and that's what will take time and deliberation and discussion and engagement. So I really look forward to all that process, and I expect it'll be at our next workshop, which is next Tuesday, because it's not quite. But anyway, we look forward to the process. Any further debate on that item? If not, I'll ask the mover, Councillor Boner, to sum up if you see the need. No, that concludes debate. All those in favour, against, is carried unanimously. And thank you for the report. Great report. The next item is 18.3. I make it. Someone just cross-check, is that right?
Yeah.
Appointment to a vacant position on the Development Assessment Panel. Drawn by me because we have a spot to fill there. And recommendations on page 626. Now, as you recall, we let this lie on the table at the previous meeting. So it's back here in its form that was at that meeting. Although I understand conversations have been had with those who were eligible, and as I understand it, that hasn't resulted in an elected member being interested in this position. So I'm just going to ask quickly again, is there an elected member interested in being on the Development Assessment Panel? If not, I'll ask the staff to put up an alternate motion, which we discussed at the meeting, and that is what you see somewhere. Sorry, that's it there. So that we would advertise for the position of independent member. That item 2, the advertisement will target a person with specific skills or experience in medium density and low to medium rise development to complement the existing skill set on the panel. So the important thing is that we would not just seek an independent person, but a really specific category of independent person. And then there'd be a selection panel of senior staff, me, okay, all right, and deputy member group, okay, deputy mayor group. So, well, I hadn't noticed that before. And whether you think that's appropriate or whether we should have a panel member on it. So, are people comfortable that we have that as the recommendation that somebody may wish to move?
Before somebody moves it, could I have a question?
Certainly.
Yeah, my question is that in terms of the gender matter, because I understand at the moment we've got one woman. Have we two? Two women. Yeah. So I'm just checking. I haven't
got every woman on council bar your good self.
I know, and I certainly don't want to go on there.
Then leave it. Just leave it be.
Yeah. No, but I just need to check that we're within our policy.
Well, yeah, Director.
Yeah, through the chair, the Act specifies you must have at least one woman and at least one.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I couldn't remember if it was one or me.
Okay, and can I just ask to seek indulgence in the meeting? The selection panel, are people comfortable with what the staff have recommended there?
Yeah.
Okay, then if there's no further questions, if you have any, I'd seek a mover of what's there. Councillor Lee, would you speak to it?
Yes, actually, no offence to anybody on council, but I'm actually quite excited at this premise. It's becoming very, very obvious that we need expertise, as much expertise as possible on DAP. The more these bigger buildings, this high density stuff comes towards us, the less I feel I deserve to be on DAP, and I really, really appreciate expert advice. So to have somebody on with those specific skills would be a very exciting prospect. So I definitely will be supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Larwood. Councillor Bowman is the other panel member. Happy if you take as a seconder?
Yep. Happy to.
Would you speak to it?
Yeah, just briefly, I'd agree with Councillor Lee that the developments are getting more complex, and even things around waste removal and drainage get more complicated as the buildings get more complicated. But I think it's still important to have elected members present, because I think there's a few interpretations of the current development plan in regards to high quality, architecturally designed, and I think that gets lost in translations. So I think that's something we still need to keep feeding back to the council administration, whether you're on the DAP or not. Okay, so I'm glad that there are still a couple of elected members on there, and it'd be interesting to see how the planning reforms are coming along. We're not sure how that's happening yet. Or
a question?
Can I ask it now?
Certainly can.
Yeah, where are we at with the development? The planning reforms, sorry.
Planning reforms, I understand the Minister is pushing incredibly hard, and the Department are responding, intending to have something lodged in Parliament in September.
Right.
I also understand that they now appreciate the complexity of the changes, and it may take up to 5 years to bring in all of the changes, but there will be a significant draft in the first round. And it's complicated for various reasons. Development touches so many parts of government. that by the time they wash it through all the related acts, it's going to take some time, and it all needs to be written and thought about. So I'm not going to worry myself about that task. In terms of the specific topic about whether elected members are on panels or not, I understand from the Director there have been recent statements made that indicate that they will be removed from panels in that bill when it's lodged in Parliament. But Director, do you want to shed any more light on that?
Through Mr. Mayor, there's probably nothing more to add other than there's been a lot of rumblings for a number of years that that was likely to be the direction. I was at a conference last week where a state government representative who was there as the author of the draft bill said that elected members not being on the panel is in the draft bill. So the time for elected members on the panel, if it was to go through, is limited. Quite right that you said that these changes will take a number of years to be implemented. Prospect may see itself as a pioneer in heading towards that path by the traditional independent.
Again.
Probably more information than we needed, Director. But, now, just getting back to the facts, I understand that the Minister is very, very keen on having fully professional panels. There are a number of challenges about that because having elected members not on the panel doesn't necessarily mean everybody else will be professional. Who chooses the professionals? So I'd like to see how that's going to be done. If the Minister thinks the Minister will have rights over every panel person selected, well, there's a lot. There's 180 of them throughout the state, so that's a bit of a job. And so we'll have to wait to see the fine print around that. Also, don't assume that there might be a reaction against that change. So just because it's lodged in the lower house by the government doesn't mean that it can get through the process easily. There is an upper house that the government doesn't control. So there'll be some lobbying done by some, maybe many, that may change that. So we can't tell with any certainty about that item. Most of the other reforms, most of the other organisations, including your LGA, are quite happy to keep working on pretty hard because we're all over the current system. But that one will be controversial, so who knows. Councillor Barnett. Sorry, Councillor Barnett, you finished as second speaking. Councillor Barnett.
Yes. I just have a question, and it goes more to just what we've been. I guess that might not be relevant. Anyway, I'll try it and see what happens. So, just a question. Yes, because our independents are paid what's the word? Allowance. That's what I'm looking for. Yes. So I'm just wondering if there is some form of development panels, whether they'll be regional or councils still have their own, but they'll be independent. So whether the members of Parliament that approve these bills will give the councils any extra resources if they're going to be paid independent. So I'm just musing here. So.
Well, yeah, you muse away. Look, to my knowledge, it's a good question. Consider it in the context of all the reforms, and one of them is that the whole planning system should be online. Now, I'd love ours to be online. Cost of doing that, significant. If the state government wants to fund going online, I'd be very happy. If we have to pick up paying for another 3 panel members, on balance, I'd think, okay, we'll do that, you do that, so there's a lot of changes that will cost money. The LGA is pushing very hard for those costs not to be borne by councils. At the same time, the state sets the fees we can charge, and there's nowhere near enough money to cover the costs that we incur. So I don't know whether that's going to be discussed either. So there's a broader context to cost. Yeah. Any further debate on this item? If not, Councillor Lee, you wish to sum up? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is the bylaw review, item 19.1, recommendation on page 642. Councillor Span, a brief reason why you withdrew it.
I'd like to make a couple of amendments, one to the dog bylaw and the other one to the waste management bylaw. be delightful.
Did you discuss these with the staff at all?
No.
Right, that's going to make it pretty tricky. I'm going to suggest we take a brief break to allow you to do so, because it can get really messy discussing bylaws. And can the staff please catch up with the councillor? And then can you advise me whether we should do it via amendment or via...
Breakfast.
Thanks. Let's have a break for about 5-10 minutes.
Hear that?
That's it, I'll second it.
Or do you want to?
No.
Boyd?
We're back online. Welcome back to the world, and thank you for coming back from that adjournment so
Jimmy, we could have left.
Councillor, if you left. Councillor Stanton has withdrawn 19.1 for discussion. In that adjournment, he had a chance to catch up with the staff to talk about a number of matters. I understand that it's been resolved that there will be a slight amendment to this here, and I'll ask Councillor Stanton to move this way if he's happy with it. So just hang on a tick. In the recommendation before you, as you see on the screen, the highlighted lettering is the addition that Councillor Stanton would like, is to remove televisions in clause 3.3, and he can explain why in a second. We've also had another request for a slight change, which I think Councillor Group was intending to move as an amendment. So we're going to incorporate that as well, if you're all okay with it. Inclusion of the definition of carriageway of the Waste Management Bylaw 6. Both of those changes are to Bylaw 6. And Councillor Group can explain that one during debate. We have a definition of carriageway which the Manager of Governance can give us when it gets to that part. Okay, so out of all that, there are two slight changes, and they are slight, we use that word, which means we're not obligated to go back out for full community consultation again, which can happen with these last minute changes, councillors. Oh, not looking at anyone in particular, Councillor Stanton. So, Councillor Stanton, if you're happy to move that way.
Yes.
Okay, then take the floor.
Yes, in item 3 and then 3.3, hard rubbish, the definition of hard rubbish here includes television sets. Now, I'm led to understand that that is no longer under hard rubbish, that these are regarded as e-waste, and if you leave a TV set out for your hard rubbish, it will not be collected and will be left there, and you'll have to dispose of it in other ways. So I suggest that we do not have a definition of e-waste as yet, and that's because we don't need one as yet. The bylaw doesn't refer to e-waste. We don't need a definition. So at this point, I'd like to recommend that we remove the word television sets to not cause any confusion for people leaving out their hard rubbish.
Okay, thank you. And so moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Group.
I'll second it, which will give me a good opportunity to explain the definition of carriageway, which is any space on a road between two gutters. Let's believe. Two curbs, sorry, not gutters. Sorry? No, well, I do now. It is, well...
Carry on.
Thank you. So I was approached by a member of the community who was a bit concerned about the lack of definition of carriageway, and so I spoke to staff earlier today about including it. That's why it's included. There is a definition of carriageway which somebody might be able to read out if anyone's interested, although I might...
Yes, thank you for that question.
I would like to ask
Manager
through the Chair.
Governance has a very simple one which I think works pretty well. Manager?
Yeah, through the Chair. Not the one that the member of the community suggested, but a more simple definition would be the part of a road intended for vehicles rather than pedestrians. Which is not the Ausroads definition, because that talks about shoulders and auxiliaries and...
Which we don't have in our city, we don't have.
Yeah. But we...
Could I just ask a question? Would that definition include bicycle lanes by any chance?
Vehicles are... bicycles are vehicles. They're definitely not pedestrians.
Well, through the Chair, we could use that simple definition and add including bicycle lanes and parked vehicles to satisfy the community member asking for the change.
I'm going to leave it with the seconder, if you're satisfied with the definition. It's not included in the motion, that you're moving. It merely says to define carriageway.
That's correct.
Okay, so that can be subject to a discussion outside of the motion, merely that we would seek to define it.
Can I just check if we, whilst not on the recommendation, we do put the definition in the actual bylaw, though, don't we? And that could be done outside of this forum? Okay. In which case I'm happy with the wording as it is. It would be good for the definition to include some reference to two-wheeled vehicles, which aren't motorised, just to ensure there's clarity. Sorry?
Electrically, 200 watts.
Anyway, I'm happy to leave that in the capable hands of staff.
Noted. Thank you. Councillor, as seconder, is there any further debate on the bylaws? Sure. Councillor Stanton, do you wish to sum up as seconder?
Thank you for your indulgence.
Your best speech ever. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried. Thank you. Next item is 19.3, Digital Transformation Local Government Initiative, joined by Councillor Evans. Just a brief reason, Councillor, why you withdrew it.
I need to speak to it.
Okay, do you wish to move it?
Yes.
Okay, then speak as the mover.
Well, I'd just like to start by saying a couple of things, and firstly to thank you to the staff and EM's elected members, again, and really reminiscent of the entire debate tonight. This kind of concept wouldn't be possible if there wasn't broad support from around the table. So what we're proposing by this motion is not to do something, is to embark on change, and that change brings with it a whole lot of challenges of itself. To get it to this point, there's been an enormous amount of goodwill and support right around the table tonight, and I just wanted to thank everyone for both their participation and also their support, and for hearing Matt and myself out as we brought this concept to Council. It is different. It would be very easy to shoot down, and I think the fact that we are at this point tonight is really a credit to us, and hopefully we can start to see some good things coming out of it. What are we trying to do, though? There is the possibility of this becoming, I guess, somewhat misunderstood, and I know Councillor Larwood has a good definition that he's come up with that he may share with us in a moment. But broadly speaking, I see it as value. So I see it as, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to delight and we're trying to add value to our broad stakeholders and to improve our business across the board through finding efficiencies. And that involves, firstly, I guess, understanding where the issues are. It involves getting a firm grasp on those, understanding where potential improvements could lie, and understanding how we can craft best practice and where technology can be used to support that, given it's now available, whereas in the past with traditional systems it hasn't been available. Through our workshopping process, I think the most important point that's come out of that, in particular, getting some wins on the board. So it would be very easy for this debate to remain conceptual for a very long time, whereas we're only given a short amount of time on council, and indeed our term is only the best part of 3 years to go. So what we talked about in our workshop that I'd be very interested in seeing this committee through this resolution get on with is finding those quick wins. So saying we get everyone together, we get the spirit of goodwill together. Now, how can we meaningfully get some wins on the board and get some interest and some excitement more broadly? Then how can we make today better, which was the second thought. So after we've done some of those immediate things, what are the more broader things we can do? How can we really start to change and inspire that level of creativity in the organisation? And then it's about the blue sky stuff. So what's the stuff we haven't thought about, and what are the questions we haven't asked yet? And how do we get to that point of understanding all of those matrices? So where are we at the moment? This working group, once it's established, is through the report and through the recommendation, only given a short time to do its work. The next stage that I think is fundamental is for us to find our partners and work out how we want it to run. So what other councils can we partner with? Who has similar objectives to us? Who would entertain an idea like this, and who would be inspired by it? And I think when we're in that place, and when we've identified our partners and are able to get going with this, I think it'll truly deliver value and truly deliver some of those delights to all of our stakeholders, residents being only one. And there are so many things we can do with it. So that's all I really wanted to say, to thank the staff and elected members for partnering with us all on this. It would have been very easy to say, no, it's all too hard, we don't get it. But there's been that level of support, and I think that's enabled us to get to where we are today, and long live it continue.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a second? Councillor Larwood, would you speak to it? Well, you've been invited to provide some illumination and definition.
I only remember 3 things from my MBA, so that means they cost $9,000 a piece. Not for money still. One of them was the concept of unfreeze, change and freeze, and so I think that's a fairly good way of describing the process that we want to embark on here. The terminology that's used and thrown around fairly loosely is around disruption and transformation and blah, blah, blah. And I don't think they're separate things. I think they're part of a process. So in my mind, we start off by unfreezing, which is the disruption. The transform is the change part. And then importantly, the freeze part is the leadership part. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for City of Prospect to lead this space at a local government level. I also understand that there's heaps of good stuff that's happening around the world in local government and in public-private sector. And so in a sense, I think part of this process is becoming an aggregator and bringing all of that good stuff together and applying it in the context of what we want to do, and then presenting that as a new model. So I'm looking forward to working with Tallis and elected members and staff and external stakeholders on disrupting, transforming and leading. Full stop. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, I just had a bit of a question. So I just really wanted some clarification around, this is obviously quite strategic and we're looking at digital, but is it also operational? And is this something that we should be expecting from within our council staff and management? It doesn't concern me because I think we're working very well with the council administration, but I'm just wanting some clarity around, is this function actually operational and not that of an elected member? I don't know, maybe to the CEO through the chair.
Well, yeah, I'll take the question. CEO, how are you... Well, that's the question.
Through you, Mayor. Look, at this stage, I'm not sure whether it is operational or not, and I think there's a journey to go through to determine that. I expect there will be 2 aspects to it. Some will be operational in that we really need to get our house in order in this area, but I also think there will be that strategic external influence. So I think it's a journey, and once we go down that path, we'll be able to identify.
Cool, thank you. Anything further, Councillor? Any further debate? Councillor Brief.
Just 3 very brief comments. First, thank you very much for bringing this to Council. The councillors on my right, I think it's a fantastic initiative. Second is, I'm really keen on seeing some tangible outcomes of this, and I've spoken to us about this previously, and I think the 9-month action plan, or the action plan to be developed within 9 months, is a really good tangible for that, so well done for that. And the third thing is, I just want to say, hats off to you. Councillor Roberts, ex-Councillor Roberts and I spent 2 years trying to get a workshop out of this building into a community facility. You've done that within 1 term in having a workshop at the Digital Hub, so well done. We couldn't do it last term, you've done it this term. Congratulations. Happy to explain that long story to you later.
Right.
No business.
It's made me feel even worse, because not only couldn't I change the council prayer in how many years, I could never move a workshop out of this building. Yes, they are 2 momentous occasions.
Good to hear that.
There was a presentation the other day in our Digital Hub on this topic that Matt ran, our Director of all things Bright and Beautiful, and the attendance at it was pretty woeful. It was very sad. We had people there from Ipswich and Sunshine Coast and Cisco Systems, I think. So some pretty cool people. And Ipswich is a top 7, a smart 7 city in the ICF ratings. We're smart 21. Well, it'd be nice to be smart 1. We do smart 7, then smart 3, and then smart 1. So we're 4th tier. And the sort of stuff they're doing was really interesting. I thought some of it was a bit technology driven rather than operational and outcome focused. The Sunshine Coast guy, who was much less interesting to look at, listen to in the first instance, was actually fantastic. This stuff was really grounded, and I think we could do a lot worse than listen to the other smart cities around Australia and elsewhere to try and understand what is it that's actually going to bring that delight to our residents and our businesses and make their lives better, not more convoluted, or do the same things. I gave you the story about registering my historic car, and I had to take 2 sheets of paper in and I got 4 back. And they did it on the computer, which is weird. But the upshot of it was that they gave me the new plates, which is the ones I ordered that I wanted. I had to give back the plates I didn't want, but they gave me anyway. When we gave those back, they had to generate another 2 pieces of paper to say that they'd actually received them. I mean, it's just a nonsense, totally inefficient. And I don't want the pieces of paper nor the other plates. So I really encourage the councillors to try and go right back to grassroots and this stuff. And I think we should all do this and all work really hard at this and try and identify experiences which add no value at all to what outcome people really, really want. And that is, I just wanted to drive my car legally. And there are other things that we do that put people through hoops that make no real sense, except that's how we have to process the transaction or the interaction or whatever it is. And in closing, I listened to a guru of marketing and persuasion once who was paid a large sum of money to come and do so at, I think it was an industry dinner. And he gave this very long missive about how to get inside people's heads and understand what they want, to really understand what you're offering them as a business and all the research and everything else. And he said, you know what people really, really want? I think I might have told some of you this story. He says, I'll tell you. And took his fingers and 2 sequin-clad, top-hatted girls came out carrying a big silver box, come up to the stage dramatically through the audience. I'll tell you what people really, really want. The answer is in this box. And gets on the stage, it's a big flurry as he takes the lid off, and the girl's standing there looking girly, I guess. And out of it comes a toaster. He says, I'll tell you what they really, really want. He puts his lever on it, up pops 2 slices of toast. He says, people just want toast. Don't ever forget what people actually want. It's pretty simple. And that was his message, which was actually lost in all the fanfare. I thought his delivery was kind of a bit weird, but his point was profound. And if we want to get to the bottom of using IT, really understand what people want.
Got what we're voting on.
Sorry, yeah, I know. You should have been there.
Toast.
It's done frozen.
The committee, the little team of people that have been set up could so easily disappear down the path of what's the latest gizmo and come and convince us to buy it. But what people really want is a safe community. We register dogs so that if they get bitten, they know which one it is, or if a dog gets out, it can be returned to its owner. We don't register dogs because we like registering things. We have all sorts of processes about keeping places healthy. We have a 3-bin system because we will recycle stuff. We have tags on bins so they can return them to where they come from. So we use all sorts of technology for all sorts of purposes. Really, really important to get back to what people actually want out of us. And it's exactly the same discussion with the community centre that we'll be having. What do people want? What are we trying to serve? How are we trying to serve them? So I love the initiative. I look forward to progress. I reckon it's going to be really challenging, but there are some very clever people around who I think are switched on to what we want. And I think the 2 people we've got leading it can sort out the wheat from the chaff in this space and really guide us down a really successful path. So hats off to you. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I think just to finish off, I think I'm going to introduce the KISS project, Keep It Simple, Stupid project. And
exactly.
But no, well done, and let's keep thinking outside squares and blue skies and everything.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? If not, I'll ask Councillor Evans if you wish to sum up.
I think we've said it all.
All those for toast? All those against?
Toast, sorry, for toast. I'm for toast.
Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Yeah, toast.
Next item is 19.4, the Joy Belushi Memorial, page 722. We've drawn it because we need to consider whether we want to make a contribution to the Port Augusta City Council. We're not obliged to, so it's blank, so we can say whatever we want. And I'm sure if we donate something, it'll be gratefully received. So I don't have a suggestion. I think it might benefit just suspending meeting procedures to talk about options with this. So seek indulgence to do that until 9:30. All those in favour? Against? It is carried. All right, we're back into sessions. Anybody wish to move it? No, we'll go to the next item. which is 19.5, which is the Ghana Indigenous Land Use Agreement, the ILUA Liaison Committee. Recommendations on page 725. Does anybody wish to nominate for the representative, Councillor Group?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Harris.
And Councillor Harris not being here, he's confirmed.
Agreed.
He's agreed to that. Brilliant. Are there any other nominations? That being the case, Councillor Group, would you like to move that
Yes,
way?
I would. To move it, and I think Councillor Harris would make an excellent representative.
I think you would too. Yeah. Someone wish to second that? Councillor Standard, you wish to speak to it?
I do, and I agree that Councillor Harris would make a fantastic representative.
Excellent. Any further debate? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Unanimously. Okay, next item is the 19.6, the Local Government Association Annual General Meeting. Page 736 is the recommendation. As you can see, we're recommending a lot of dots. So let's try and advance that. What's on the screen is excellent. So we have a suggestion from Group, as I understand it, about disability employment targets. And item C is about defining something in the Act that I will come to in a second. Well, item A, is that now redundant?
Well, yes, this will become
A and B.
A1 and 2. But that's just the beginning of it.
Ah, okay, all right. So let's just get that, the following information. So while we're working on that, can I... Councillor Group, brief reason for what's currently called B.
Are we in session?
I just seek your indulgence to suspend meeting procedures to discuss these two items until 9:45 if we need to. All those in favour? Against is carried.
Thank you. Look, a couple of months, or probably about 3 months ago, I went to a meeting for the Mayor of a large disability employment provider. They had invited a number of business leaders from around Adelaide. And it was really interesting, actually, because we had a conversation about engaging people with disability in paid roles within business and the contribution that can be made. I kind of took that on board and have been mulling it over my head for a little while, and I think it would be good to test with the LGA as a whole whether they would consider what we've got there in terms of looking at disability employment targets across us as a sector. It's a bit radical, a bit different, but this process is just to test the notion with the LGA. It's not saying we are putting it up and we're supporting it 100%. At this point, it's really just testing that notion. They'll come back and give us a bit of a sense as to whether they think it's worthy of going up to the LGA AGM or not. I don't think we generally have targets in the local government sector around people with disability or Indigenous targets or any other targets for that matter. Across local government, across state government, across federal government, it's much more of an accepted practice to have those targets as part of your workforce planning process, and I just think it'd be good to at least initiate the debate within local government as well. And so that's why I'd like to put it up as a motion. As a motion.
No, I think it's a good idea. We've got more flexibility than some to do it. Does anybody have an objection to that going up under the name of Prospect? We're comfortable with that? Okay, the next item, we're asking the Act be clarified around the interpretation of available in relation to documents and registers being made available to the public to include being available online as an addition or an alternative to hard copy.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a bit clumsy.
Is it available now?
Lots of availables.
The issue has come out of what you would have noticed in the audit report tonight, the audit committee report, item whatever it is, where the manager of governance, Kerry, has asked for the LGA to audit our compliance with the Act, the basic Local Government Act, which I thought was a really clever, simple but clever thing to do. We had a lot of non-compliances noted because we are meant to make a lot of our documents available to the public. If you go to the front counter, there's all sorts of pamphlets there, as Alison's pointed out. It drives her nuts every time she looks at them. But we don't have the 65 procedures on the wall in racks. We don't have our annual report, I don't think, is out there in hard copy. I don't think that's out there anymore. and our bylaws aren't out there in a little rack to pull off. So the auditor who came out to check compliance said non-compliant. So the report, if you look at it in colour, is covered in red ink. And what the staff quite rightly pointed out is to say, we just got to get on the website and search policies, and they're all there. It's pretty easy, 2 clicks away, and search anyone you want. If you want it printed, you just ask for it to be printed. There's a slight problem with us not having a terminal for public use in the foyer, which I've spoken to the CEO about, so we do have a slight issue there, which I know they'll resolve. But the question was raised, does the word available mean online or not? And the auditor said, not. The problem with the Act is that earlier clauses written in 93, I presume, whatever date the Act is, 1990 or 99, doesn't use words that are inclusive or exclusive of the internet, but later amendments do. So if you read the whole thing in totality, the first parts don't mention online, but later parts do mention online. So for the sake of consistency, it should all read the same, and for interpretation of the word available, we shouldn't get marked down for having really documents that are rarely sought available online and not, filling out foyer full of paper that no one will ever use. That's where it's come from.
Just a question, would that include development assessment applications as a document?
There is a different part of the Act relating to that. I don't know where you quote that.
Through the Chair, it's a Different Acts Development Act,
Yeah.
1993.
Yeah, and what's the current requirement for, say, someone coming and asking for a C development application? What are we obliged to do?
Through the Chair, there's a register which is publicly available at the front counter, which talks about essentially the detail of what's on a development application form, which is where it is, what it is. There's no requirement to have all plans publicly available. There is a requirement during public notification, whether it be Category 2 or Category 3, for those plans to be available at request from the Council. But there's no requirement, as I understand, to keep all planning applications available. There are some copyright implications that can come into that.
Separate Act.
Yes.
And the reforms will take over that Act, and the LGA has been pushing reasonably hard to say there's going to be a lot more transparency. The government, the state government, is saying we want it all online, and those two things actually work quite well together. So expect that will be improved. So people understand where the second bits come from. Has anybody got any objection to that? Seems pretty straightforward to me. Okay, then you happy with the wording now? Manager, governance?
We're not in session.
I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I do believe it could probably be refined a little. But this will have to go to the LGA for acceptance, and they quite often will make minor amendments to the wording. And so as long as the intent is not changed, I'm sure that's fine.
Okay, thank you. And we just to clarify, available online as an addition to hard copy. I'm just wondering whether we actually want it to be an alternative rather than an addition. Because if we were audited, they'd say, well, I need to see now the hard copy and online.
Could be and/or.
No, that's not.
Online as an alternative to. What are your thoughts?
Through the Chair, my thoughts when I wrote that was there's some documents I believe should be in hard copy, which is the annual business plan, that sort of thing, that sit on the front counter. So in addition, you can have them online. I think what I was trying to say is some things will have to still be hard copy. So you could have it as an addition or an alternative. If that's not clear, I'll take that on board if I send it.
I just think the intention is that we don't get red ink on our audit. The things that we don't think need to be hard copy. So,
If we just said available online as an alternative to hard copy,
Yeah,
that gives you the option.
that's what I was thinking.
yeah, I think that would be better.
Yep.
Right,
Or
so
does that cover if they request a copy? Because some things there are costs
associated.
I think that will come out of the
All right, okay.
where the kernel of the question investigations lead to all the other nuances about it, and you're quite right. Do we have a little printer next to our little terminal so you can, if someone comes and says, I want a copy of every policy, 3 in the shredder or bring the chips around. Anyway, so I'll bring us back in a formal session. Somebody happy to move that way? Deputy Mayor, excellent. You'll be there speaking to it.
Yeah.
You wish to speak to it now?
I'll save my wise words for later.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Barnett. Do you wish to speak to it? Brilliant. Any further debate? All those in favour? Gets carried. Thank you. And that brings, yes, we came back in about 30 seconds ago. That takes us to the end of that bit of the agenda. Now we get to Council Diary. And there's a whole heap of stuff there. Read it at your leisure. Unfortunately, North Adelaide versus Sturt this weekend. Come along, you never know.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
I've got another team playing that might win.
I've opened up this game. I think it's the last home game, isn't it? I've opened up this game to staff and family of you. So please come and enjoy the hospitality, have a bit of fun. I don't think we're going to hope in whatever of winning, but the people who come generally enjoy themselves anyway. And it's a really good community event. You often see people you know, and if we've got space, I'd encourage you to drag anybody off the concourse into the rooms, because I have never been able to eat Gary out of the afternoon tea, so there'll be plenty there. And please make sure, if you want to do that, you get tickets, because we're entitled to 60 under our lease deal, which will save you and your family paying at the gate. If you happen to get in, because you didn't remember to do that, and you want to get into the afternoon tea, just please come up and see me or Gary, and you're more than welcome into the sheep pen, the council enclosure. So please come and join us. I'll have some mates there, so we'll have a bit of fun. As for the rest of the items on there, the Prospect Professionals Business Networking Education event on the 9th of September at Cafe Komodo. I don't think I can make it. Hopefully some of you can. Councillor Barnett indicating should be there. They're turning into great events, those things.
Yeah.
Business Forum on the NBN is the 15th of September. I thought there was a breakfast thing coming up. Director, is that not on this list?
That's a different event. That's, yes, but very specific business focused.
Yeah. Okay, right, good. And the citizenship ceremony on the 21st of September. Very good. General business. Are there any items of general business?
That's it.
No. General business of an urgent nature. No, there are no confidential items. The meeting is closed.